so that we're moving forward. So a couple announcements. See if I can pull up the screen. Alrighty, so we've got our Resiliency Through Agriculture virtual conference, December 8th through the 10th. And please sign up through info@indianag.org to receive the latest information on that conference. Registration will be available within the next couple of weeks here. And then this week we are really focusing on traditional foods and kind of commercial kitchen usage. This opportunity on Thursday will also highlight, the use of commercial kitchens to really increase access to traditional foods up in Alaska through a program up there. So this is going to be a really nice follow-up to today's conversation. So please mark your calendars for that one. Go ahead and stop sharing. So I'll do a quick introduction, then I'll turn it over to Scott. Again, Keir Johnson Reyes with Intertribal Agriculture Council. I'm the National Lead for the Technical Assistance Program and the Pacific Region Technical Assistance Specialist. And this webinar series, the IAC CARES series, has been really focusing on empowering tribal leaders and decision makers around the critical components to infrastructure development around ag and food systems in Indian country. And so we're so appreciative to have Scott Heskett again from the HESMAN Group on, and I'll turn it over to you now, Scott. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Keir. As Keir said, my name is Scott Heskett. I am one of the principals of the HESMAN Group. I have been a food service consultant for 23 years now, doing all variety of jobs, large to small, and around the world. I want to go over just for a second a few of the things that I want to present in this. What a consultant is, the things that you, the owner, need to have as a basis and decisions made before you go to a design professional and to ease the process, what the process is, how that process should be, design process should be driven, and some of the things that will help make decisions, and what you can expect upon, what you should expect upon the completion of the project. And then finally, I want to wrap up with some common missteps that I see a lot of the time, not just in Indian country, but particularly in Indian country. Basically, as a food service consultant, what I do is I sit down with you, the owner, and you tell me what you want to accomplish with the project and what your end goals are and the needs that project needs to meet. From there, I take that, come up with a design that is informed by flow and function through my experience, and we go over a layout and continue to refine that design. Eventually, what I present is a set of documents that you, the owner, can then put out to bid in order to get what you want. So a consultant is not a salesman. A consultant should function as the owner's advocate in the building process. There are really 5 things before you meet with the designer. If you'll answer 5 questions to yourself before you meet with the designer, it will make the process go much smoother and more efficient, and ultimately result in a better project that is more reflective of your needs. Those questions are: number 1, what are you going to serve? A menu. Now, in some instances, all you're doing is processing the food for storage, but that's the same question still applies. What is it you're processing? So question number 1, what are you going to serve? Question number 2, what is the required duration of storage? Again, you may get deliveries weekly. In remote areas, it may be monthly or longer. That's going to impact the size of your kitchen. And if you're processing food, how long are you going to store it before it moves on to the next point of process? That's question number 2. Number 3, how many people are you going to serve? That question can vary greatly, but try and get a genuine, optimal number that is representative of what you are going to serve most commonly. So you may have 300 one month, but weekly you're serving 30 people. So that's kind of the information your designer will need to know. Question number 4, how often will you serve them? Again, is this going to be a yearly event? Is this going to be a weekly event? Is it going to be a daily event? Once you have that figured out, again, your designer can come in and begin to set up the flow, because there's a world of difference between a yearly event and something you have to come into the kitchen and work in daily. The final question is one that probably I see gets the least amount of thought, and it's very important, and that's how will you scrap the soiled ware? Is it all going to be disposable? Is it going to be on trays? Are you going to set a table with china? All of that is going to impact your design. And once you have that figured out, the design will go much smoother. So those 5 questions, that's a good place to have at least some thoughts. You don't have to have hard answers when you walk in and first sit down with your designer. It's a conversation. It should be a conversation. And once you have those thoughts, those ideas, and those questions answered, you're ready to sit down with your designer, and he's going to ask a number of other questions. The process itself, I want to talk about the design process and how, what you should expect as you move through it. And the process, please realize, is always variable depending on external factors. But typically and historically, once you have these 5 questions answered, walk into and sit down with your designer, you're going to probably start at a schematic design phase. What that means is you sit down, have the meeting, and express your wants and desires. The designer will then come back with a design, possibly a second or third option, and that design is simply a sketch that identifies spaces. The schematic design should identify the flow of the food through the kitchen, how the kitchen works. One point of caution, at schematic design level, it is very, very easy to lose sight, especially for ownership, to lose sight of what it is that process is about, which is flow. And it's very easy to start focusing in on this particular piece of equipment. I need this range or that range, and what are the attributes of that? And that's not something you want. That's not a rabbit hole it's advantageous to go down at schematic. Keep schematic for how the kitchen works. Once that's established, you're going to find there's things that you wanted that you can't do, and there may be opportunities that you can pick up in schematic that you didn't realize. And that's where the design begins to get refined, and the give and take starts to happen. Some of the things you wanted just aren't possible, but there's an opportunity here. We had some space we didn't know about. So that is what schematic is for. The next, and before I move on from that, schematic design, you should usually expect a design that you can approve which represents the flow of food through the kitchen. You should expect an estimate that is based on square footage. So the kitchen is 1,000 square feet. The multiplier at your location is X, 170. So, you can do the math, and that you should expect a square foot estimate there. So design and an estimate. The next phase is design development. That's where the plan is going to start taking on some detail, a great amount of detail, in fact, and this is where you begin to talk, and it's appropriate to talk about specific pieces of equipment. That I need this, and I like this because of this. Find a way to fit this in. You will see a drawing presented that shows the individual pieces of equipment, calls them out, has them numbered, named, an arrangement schedule. So you know what each piece of equipment is, how it fits into the design, and how it functions in the kitchen layout. That is what design development is. Along with that drawing, that detailed drawing, you should expect a brochure book that has all the equipment spec sheets numbered and that correspond with that drawing. So item number 1 on that drawing, that's a mixer. I can look at item number 1 in the brochure book and see, okay, this is a mixer, it's brand X, these are its features, great and good. Or you can go back and tell your designer at that point, I don't like that brand, we've had a bad experience with that brand, let's have a conversation about changing that. And that's kind of what that book is for. Also, at the design development point, you should expect an itemized estimate. So the estimate is no longer based on square foot. It is now based on the equipment selected. So you can begin to go through and see a much more refined number, a much more real number for what you can expect to spend for your kitchen. After that phase is the construction documents. This is where the design has been finalized, the equipment selected is finalized, and now what is happening is you are preparing documents for the bid process. So you've got arrangement, any kind of special conditions in the building that need to be met, and connection plans, details, all of those things that go along in the construction drawings, as well as a set of specifications that can go out with that can be put out to bid. So everybody can bid on it, and they're all bidding from the same thing and know what all of those things are. This is the construction documents. It behooves you to follow the process as it's laid out. Major changes made while you're in the construction document phase. For you, the owner, just be aware. There's no problem with that, but try and keep it minimal, because especially, and I'm speaking from experience here, is someone decides they want to make a change a week before the job is issued. It can get hard for all of the trades to be sure that they have that change picked up. That's why you want to really focus in on design development and review the drawings and the brochure book thoroughly at that point. You may decide you want to make a change under construction document, and then you've got the entire team, engineers, architects, food service, HVAC, everybody has to pick that up then in their documents. And it just presents more opportunity for mistakes to take place. But, it can be done. But try and keep it simple. Try and keep it minimal as best you can. Everybody expects some changes under construction documents. The next phase is the bid phase. And this one I see getting compressed more and more as time goes on. once the document is put out for bid, you will receive bids from any number of contractors on the document, and at this point, as a consultant, my role then becomes to answer any questions from them. Very often the questions are like, well, the model that was specified has been discontinued. What do you want us to use in its place? And those are the kind of questions that should be expected. Or, we've got you these documents. We think we see a problem here. Let's get it addressed at that point. And that's the bid phase. It's fairly short and to the point. After that is construction administration. This involves, once the project has been awarded, the contractor will send back through the architect and the design team shop drawings for review and approval to make sure that what the kitchen equipment contractor has submitted meets with the contract documents. And if there is any deviation that it's caught, that there should be an explanation for it and why it's been changed if it has. That is the design process kind of encapsulated into a short little paragraph there. One of the things that you as the owner should keep in mind and practice in order to make this process work as efficiently as possible is very often, especially in tribal work, and I've been on both sides of it. I've been a member of the design committee. I've been the designer. So I have a lot of experience being on both sides of this, both as ownership and both as the designer. And this is the problem I see almost without exception, is there is no one, especially when it's a committee, that is the decision maker. What I would encourage you as the owner to do, if you have a committee, elect one person to speak for that committee. Now, that's not to say that a committee person can't call a designer, whether it's your architect or your food service consultant or whoever it needs to be, quite honestly, and ask a question, have a conversation. But decisions need to come from one person. And that needs to be communicated to one person. Generally, to the architect. Most architects like it that way. They need to be in the loop. They want to be in the loop, and they will disseminate the information that has been sent to them to all the appropriate parties. It really is best to establish how those decisions are communicated. Talk with your architect, your person building the building, and get a plan set out of, okay, we have this kitchen, especially as it gets larger, but really it applies across the spectrum. Get with your architects. We have, as we build this building, how are we going to talk to your design team? And get it established with your architect right up front. So he may come back and say, you talk to me, I'll send out the information to all of my team members. He may say, go talk to whoever you want, but get that established so you know how to communicate. And you know how the design team communicates. A couple of words of caution here. Something I'm sure you all see a lot is questions are addressed and sent to everybody, and answers are reply all. That's good to cover yourself, but in actual practice, what I would suggest is that do your best to narrow that down. For instance, if you're talking to me, the food service consultant, and you're trying to get information to me, don't send it to the engineers. Send it to your architect, who will send it to me, or copy your architect, whatever you've worked out. But it is very easy, as I know you all know, for emails to get lost when you get 30 emails a day and none of them apply to your discipline. So do your best to get it narrowed down. Your design team, if they're working hard and they see it was addressed to them, your electrical guy gets it and he says, no, this is a question for food service, he's going to let you know that, or he's going to let the architect know it, or he's going to forward it. And if he doesn't, you may have to follow up. But it's easy for your questions and concerns to get lost in mass emails or reply alls. Some of the things I want to talk now, what you should expect upon completion, because this is also, again, where I see a lot of issues. You should approach, and this is the way it was taught to me, is once this project is put out for bid, this is no different than you going out to buy a car. Always look at it that way. Once that equipment is delivered, if it's scratched, dinged, not right, something doesn't work, would you accept that on a car you bought? You might, as long as they took some money off the cost of the car. This is no different. And as a matter of fact, this has a higher threshold because more often than not, keep in mind, you're spending tribal dollars. This is your people's money. And the number of times I've seen things be let go is, frankly, somewhat disturbing to me. This is your people's money. They need to get everything they can out of these assets. But upon completion, what will happen is your consultant, your architects, your designers, they're going to come out to the project. They're going to do a punch. And that means they're going to go and mark and make a list of anything that they see that is deficient. That list will then go back through the architect and be sent back to your tribal nation or your community committee or what have you. And the contractor is responsible to fix all those. Because remember, when you put out the construction documents, once those were issued, that is what he agreed to provide. And anything less, you need to talk about with him and really decide whether or not you're going to accept it. We're going to take that punch list, and you're going to go through and want to make sure that he gets all those deficiencies corrected. And then your job should be ready to go, ready for occupation. He's going to come in, particularly in the kitchen, at least as a part of all of our documents. That contractor is going to have to get all the manufacturer's reps in, set up a time with you, the owner, and go through how each piece of equipment works, how you light it, how you start it, what button to push. Just the general idea of this is how you operate this piece of equipment. And once that's done, you should be good to go. I want to kind of shift gears now away from the process and talk about what I think is the bigger issue. Your architect can really, quite frankly, orient you to the process. The things I went through are not that complex. But I want to talk about now what I see as the more important part of this, and that is the missteps, especially when it comes to some of these tribal projects. Like I said, I've sat on both sides of this. One of the things that you really need to do as a tribal organization is when you first sit down, before you ever meet with your designer, set down a list. This is what we need, and these are all the things we want, and on that list, don't hold back. Figure out everything. Put it all on there. And then as a group or as a director, figure, okay, we can cut a few of these things that, frankly aren't there. But get it all on a piece of paper. So that way, at least that way, when you sit down with your designer and you're having this conversation, and suddenly the designer says, well, we've got this extra little bit of space over here. It's going to be a closet if you don't need it. You can say, wait, we had something on that list. Go back and look at that list, and, hey, can we afford this? Let's get this in this space. Keep that list throughout your project. One of the things I see, another thing I see in Indian country quite often is things tend to get overbuilt. That is due mostly to the bigger problem that I'll talk about later, but know exactly what you need. Don't let a salesman tell you what you need, because I've seen buildings very often with, whole wings added on that sit idle because a salesman said this is what you need. So at least talk about it with someone who's impartial. Don't ever feel that you are beholden to your designer's advice. Just because I'm the consultant, I'm the designer, or this person's the architect, they should not be coming in dictating to you. Just keep in the back of your mind that you're paying them for their experience and advice, and weigh that against what you feel is appropriate. If you don't understand why they are telling you this is not a good idea or this is a good idea, press them. Have them explain the why. Very often, there are a lot of people who just fall into that. Okay, that's fine. That's a good idea. Go with that. And ultimately, your designer, the design you get is only as good as the input the designer gets. So take his advice, weigh it. Don't feel beholden to it, but listen to it and decide for yourself. The next one I want to talk about is the contractor, and this, unfortunately, is probably the most egregious and worst thing that I see on a regular basis. The contractor on your job, you're probably going to see him almost daily, whereas the designer, the person you've paid to advise and bring their experience to your project, you're going to see them a few times, a handful of times. That contractor is going to be your friend. He's going to put his arm around you, and he's going to tell you all the great things and how wonderful the decisions you make are. Never forget that he has a bottom line he has to meet, and the easiest way for him to meet that bottom line is to be your best friend. And I've seen this so many times, and in some instances so egregious that I have seen a contractor come out here and put his arm around a little old lady in a wheelchair, talking about how, now, honey, I'm going to take care of you. And this is where you need to be educated. Know what he means when he says he's going to take care of you. He means he's going to come out here and sell you utensils. He's going to come out here and sell you service. He's going to come out here and sell you repairs. He's going to come out here and sell you replacement parts. That's what he means. Your contractor is not your best friend. This is a project that he agreed to provide, a set of documents that he agreed to build to. So many times it's that put my arm around you or shake your hand and you can walk away. It's just really, really bad and disturbing. So while it's very easy to fall into that trap, because you'll see this guy every day. It's so easy to fall into that trap of he's my best friend. Just don't allow yourself to go there. The last one I want to talk about is probably the touchiest, and that is sovereignty. And I'm going to explain where I'm going with this a little bit with a story. I had a project that a director came out and I said, you have got to do this or you won't meet code. And actually it was the fire code. And for 4 months, this director came back and said, we're sovereign, we don't have to abide by that code. Technically, he is absolutely correct. Technically. But after 4 months of going back and forth, and he absolutely hated me. At 7 o'clock at night, we were at a meeting. I said, you are going to regret this. You are outside of code compliance. You are not going to be able to be insured. And he said, we're sovereign. That doesn't matter. He called his insurance for the tribe. And she laughed at him for what he was wanting to do. Said, absolutely not. There is no way we would pay any claim that would come as a result of what you're wanting to do. Your sovereignty is great. We need to exercise our sovereignty. But don't punch down, punch up. You know, we're talking about health and safety. Don't try and be less than. You know, I often work in two of the most restrictive health code districts in the nation, and it's not that hard to meet code. I would encourage you, if you want to exercise sovereignty, and I think it is important to do that, do better. Find ways that your health code is going to be more stringent, not less. Find ways your electrical code is more stringent, not less. Because while, yes, we are sovereign, the minute a non-tribal member walks in there, trips, gets hurt, God forbid, dies in a fire, they or their family are not going to file a claim against you in tribal court. It is going to be in a state court or a federal court. It's not going to be in your court. So always punch up, be better than. After all, it is the health and safety of our own people, of our kids, our grandparents. I mean, this is something I see often is, well, we're not selling this food. We're producing it in our little agricultural department, and we're giving it away to seniors. Well, if you've processed it, I hope you've cleaned it well and observed all the codes that go along with that, because these are our people. I don't want to see Grandma. I don't want to see my mother get sick, and we should be able to take care of them. But follow those codes. Keep in mind that it's our kids and our elders, and, you know, do better. So with that, I'll wrap up, and we can go back, and Kiera, I'll let you take over.
Thank you so much, Scott. And I neglected to mention that both Scott and I are members of the Osage Nation right up at the top there. So I really appreciate your time and effort, and there might very well be a lot of questions here, and yet I also want to be really respectful of Jamie's time, who was able to join us. Thank you so much. And so one of the questions in the chat that came up, Scott, and I'm wondering if you could do this just as a quick opportunity for people to get the information in the chat. Would you be open to providing, we had a question about getting the 5 questions right at the top of the call here. So if there's a way that
yeah, I'm not sure I know how to do that, just to respond, but
okay. Or you can email them to me, and then I'll go ahead and I can post them here.
I'll do that. I'll email them to you, Kiera.
Much appreciated. And then again, also maybe a good contact number and some information for people to be able to reach back out to you, Scott, if possible.
I'll do that.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Dan Cornelius with the Great Lakes region, technical assistant specialist out there, who's going to introduce our next speaker. And again, we will have a little time at the end for questions. And so, Scott, if you're available to stay on, that would be great, because we might have some interplay there.
I will stay on the line.
Much appreciated. Thank you again so much.
Thanks, Kier.
Yep, it looks like one of our let's see, participants, Deb, was able to provide the questions there. So thank you so much, Deb. Alrighty, Dan, thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Jamie, is your sound working? I think Jamie might have been having a little bit of issue with the audio. I know that she's on. Oh, looks like she dropped off. Well, we're trying to get Jamie's sound going, and in the meantime, I just wanted, so Jamie Betters is the director of the Oneida Cannery up in Oneida Nation of Wisconsin in Green Bay. I know quite a few people have been there, whether it be food sovereignty summits or for other events. And if you haven't been there, we actually had worked with Jamie and Ernie Stevens had shot video, and we did they did a great video tour of the Oneida Cannery for the Intertribal Food Summit back in June. I posted that link. That's on the IAC YouTube channel. So you'll see that link in the chat box. It's about half hour going through a pretty detailed tour of that facility. So if anyone here is working on constructing a facility, that is, that's going to be one of your best bets to really seeing how Oneida has approached the design, the development of that facility. And I think that Jamie would say that that facility really has evolved over time, and a lot of what it is now has been from figuring out what works, from figuring out how to be more efficient. And I think one of the other interesting components of the facility is that community members are able to use it, but it's also part of a tribal enterprise of the corn that is the white corn that's grown and harvested at Junhinqua at the tribal farm is then processed at the cannery. So that, I think as tribes are looking at business models, at operational models, how do you fund, how do you keep these facilities going? I think looking at, at the cannery is a good example of where there's an enterprise component there, and that corn really goes to feed the community. Still waiting for Jamie to get the tech issues figured out, but in the meantime, I wanted to show just a few pictures that you can see what the Oneida Cannery looks like. And then I've got another example too that I was going to share and talk about. So this is the white corn. This is Junhinqua. This is from a food sovereignty summit a few years ago, but you can see the big braids of the white corn there. And then here's where it's finished. I know Jamie probably would be upset that this is a little bit of an older picture. There's been quite a bit of upgrades that have happened there over the years, but you see the big steam kettles here. And I think that's really one of the other big things that I recommend is when you're constructing your facility of, agree with our previous speaker with Scott of looking at what equipment works the best for you. I know here that with the cannery, the facility there has steam as, coming in. There's a lot of benefits in terms of efficiency. There sometimes can be drawbacks of using that central steam, but are you going to be using propane, electricity? All of these issues when you're designing a facility are important to be figuring out. But you can see here those kettles, and then one of the great things with the cannery is the commercial dehydrators. And you can put, you can do quite a bit of corn in one of these. And then wanted to show another example. This is a kitchen with Intertribal Ag Council within the region. This is actually the facility that we use. We cater powwows. We do a big event called Taste of Madison, featuring tribal food products. And this is another type of a model. This kitchen, the feed kitchen in Madison, Wisconsin, was designed for supporting entrepreneurial food entrepreneurs. A lot of food carts cook out of here. A lot of businesses that get started and want to do their initial batches, develop their product and get a product line going, they use this facility. And a lot of them then have expanded and have constructed their own facilities after getting started in this site. I'm going to post a link. We did a tour of this facility with Chris Brockle as the director, and we do a walkthrough. He shows the different equipment that they have and talks a bit about some of the operational components of running a facility like that, including of some of what would they do different. I know one of the big things that Chris would talk about is cold storage, and storage in general is something that they just don't have enough of it. And that can be a challenge of that certain times of the year, you may have a greater need for storage than at other times, and figuring out how to be able to handle that capacity, I know is one of the big challenges that many communities face. One of the other things with this facility is the maintenance. How, constructing your facility is one of the first steps, but how are you going to keep it clean over time? And how are you gonna administer it over time as well? Because there's a lot of hours that go into going to keeping it clean, going into making sure that all the equipment is working right. So the feed kitchen is another one of these examples. And you can see here another picture. And actually, it's called the feed kitchens because there's multiple different kitchens, and each one can be reserved on its own. And in some instances, the different equipment can be reserved too. The website does list out all of the equipment that's available. And here you can see some shots in action. You got Brian Yazzie up in the top corner there of getting ready for the Taste of Madison a few years ago, and then a couple of pictures of working with youth. We've done some different workshops, and just having this facility that you can go in and rent out, and and having commercial grade equipment, you can do a lot more product if you're set up to be able to do it in the right way. And here we're just breaking down some turkeys, but we've used it for all different kinds of activities over the years. So I'm going to go ahead and paste a link to this tour as well. Both of these facilities are really constructed and operated in different ways, but I think for the tribes that I'm working with in Great Lakes region, both of them offer definitely some opportunities and insights into how might you structure a facility from both a design perspective, but then really thinking about how are you going to manage and operate it for the long term. But I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share, and I think if we want to open it up to any questions and discussion.
Great. Feel free to post in either the Q&A section or the chat section. And let's see, Scott is still on the line, and Dan's got a lot of great experience to share as well.
I'm just about to paste the link for the feed kitchens. And I know that their manager has said that he's happy if we have anyone who is looking for more help to just share some of their experience over the years of operating that facility, where you've got really dozens of users that are coming in on a regular basis. We just have a little key fob that we can use to get in and out of the building. And one of the other big things that working with on some food code implementation, whenever we use it, whenever we're doing a batch of anything, we need to record what we're making, and there's logbooks, and then both the local public health department and the state Department of Ag will come in and check those books from time to time. So using some of that experience as we're getting some of these tribal facilities up and going, of where the tribes would be responsible for handling that versus, versus a county or a state coming in.
Thank you. Scott, could you share a little bit about if folks are interested in following up with you directly, what types of things you might be able to assist them with, or just kind of follow up after our time together today?
Yeah, I am sending you right now, Kier, the information to post for those 5 questions. You should receive them anytime. Yeah, and for the consultant, my role is typically to work for an architect. As always, I am happy. Please feel free to call, and you should feel free to call and ask myself or any consultant, basically, the questions about getting this started. Most consulting firms, not all, but most, generally work through the architect as part of a design team. That's just the way they are set up. Because, for instance, a consultant, unless he has a engineer's license, can't design your hood system, your ventilator system. What he can do is come in and size the hoods to make sure it meets code, the equipment fits underneath it. That's kind of it. So there are things that particular disciplines aren't licensed to do. But you should always feel free to call, and especially when you're setting out on a project and you maybe haven't even engaged the architect yet, you should be able to call your consultant, local, wherever, and just have the discussion of, this is what we're thinking about. What are some of the things that I need to consider? And the consultant can help you refine your options before you meet with your architect and get a easier process to take place. I hope that answered it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Comment looks like they're Dan, just Deb sharing that it's really neat, this model of like a fee for use kitchen to help justifying paying for overhead expenses and multiple use. Scott, there's definitely interest in value added production and looking at developing infrastructure that can be for designing and developing products. Are there some key differences or things that people need to consider going from commercial kitchen, which there might be like serving people, to more packaging and then getting out to direct market sales and local regional markets?
Sorry, was that directed at me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things you are going to have to take into account is once you are marketing, the FDA becomes involved. So there is a whole nother level of code to require, the code requirements that you're going to have to meet. It's not a Herculean step. Just as long as you know that is what you're going to be doing, or that is what your end goal is, then the kitchen can be set up for that from the beginning. You can walk into a production kitchen, depending on the product, of course. You can walk into a production kitchen and not see a lot of difference between a regular kitchen you might see at a community building. But you need to know all the applicable codes that you are going to meet once you start selling the product to the public.
Yeah, and I put my email on there as well. If anyone if anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact me. And we host regional food summits as well, and it's always interesting going into a different location. We try to have something where we at least have a central kitchen to be able to use, but something as simple as the height of a dishwasher. if you can't fit your sheet pans into that dishwasher, or you don't even have a dishwasher, in one of our cases, that that really can complicate the operations. And for those events, we have enough staff, we make it work, but some of those little details can make a big difference in the functionality of a kitchen. I'd also recommend too of really trying to work with who your users are going to be, and what perspectives do they have. For our regional events, we've had I think for our last one before pandemic back in 2019, we had like 70 native chefs there, and a lot of them have some great ideas too. So they're great resources to reach out to. And it's a kind of a tough time we're in, but restaurant equipment on the used market is it's pretty easy to find. So I think that's another thing, is just sourcing equipment. That a lot of the equipment dealers, a lot of them deal in used equipment, and sometimes you can find some pretty good deals there. But you want to make sure that it's going to be working, and sometimes you may put more into getting it fixed than ultimately and just getting something new. But depends on what it is.
Yeah, Dan, I'm glad you brought that up. If I can jump in there, because you brought up a very important point, and that's the difference between something that's just a sold product and a design that is informed. The designer, for instance, you mentioned the sheet pans fitting in the dishwasher. That's another thing. I've seen that several times, and once the salesman sells you, it's just like your used car dealer. It's sold, it's done, he walks away. And that is the greatest benefit to a professional design, is that all of that should be thought through. And if it's not, shame on the designer. I mean, that's bad. But I'm glad you brought that up, because that is an important point. So often, many of these things just kind of get rushed through. And in addition to some budget concerns that you have, a very common thing to help address those, in addition to used equipment, is also leased equipment. For instance, your dishwashers, ice makers, those type of things. Usually it can be advantageous to lease if budget is a concern.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Great, all right. Well, any more showing here? I just, again, appreciate your time so much, Scott, for coming on here and just providing that level of expertise. And, just for people that are navigating, these new waters, to have, your experience being lent has been, I think, just very fruitful and productive. And Dan, my valued colleague, thank you for your perspective as well. And so glad that we were able to highlight both of those phenomenal models today that you brought to us. And all the participants, thank you so much. We will post this on our IAC YouTube channel, and we are in the process of building out online curriculum and workshop form. And so kind of stay tuned. IAC has a platform that we utilize called Mighty Networks. And so you can sign up if you just punch in Mighty Networks. You can sign up through Intertribal Agriculture Council in the search engine, and gain access to a lot of great webinar content, and that's in workshop form. And we're continuing to grow that out. Anything else that you'd like to add, Scott, before we close out?
I don't believe so. I appreciate the opportunity, and please, if you all have any questions further for me, I'm happy to take your call. Kier has all my contact information, and please don't hesitate to call. I'm happy to help our community.
Thank you so much. And then there was a question that came in briefly, and maybe Dan, this is one of your areas of expertise, talking about cooperative models for commercial kitchens. And maybe, Scott, if you've heard of any functioning models, that's a question that did just come in.
Yeah, so I just want to just mention we have a tribal cooperative development workshop that's on the Intertribal Council Ag Council Network on Mighty Networks. So there's some more background there, but you know, that feed kitchen that I showed, that's administered by a nonprofit, but it really that's what it is. It's a cooperative kitchen of everybody who uses it pays some sort of a fee. You know, as a nonprofit, we were paying $20 an hour. Now we're paying, I think, 22 or 22.50 plus a monthly fee for that cold storage. And you know, those fees add up, and I think it's something to be definitely aware of for community members, that you know, it might be too expensive to be, you know, to be able to use a kitchen, but there is operational expenses. But for all of those users who are, you know, who are helping to you know, to sustain those operations, and that's how that kitchen is able to function. And I think for tribes and the ones I'm working with, that's part of where, you know, really encourage everybody to look at how are you going to structure those operations, that you're going to have overhead. And if you're going to have you know, have the tribe be sponsoring it over the years, you know, that's one model. Otherwise, you know, it's looking for grants to help to keep it going, or have the user fees funding it. But you know, where are you going to have that operational support to, you know, to pay for the power, to pay for the, you know, to repairs on the equipment? That's one of the big questions. And I think you really just need to look at what's your structure. And again, we're happy to provide some more guidance on that if anyone is looking for help.
Yeah, and one other thing, if I may add, with the cooperative kitchens, it's best if you're building something new, find a way to segregate your storage. I mean, your refrigerators and freezers come with locks and keys, and when you go out and buy shelving that, you know, has a security cage on it. Someone can close and lock. And I think with that, you know, pretty much everything else can be shared. Just be able to have your participants store away and secure their items.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, and the same thing with the equipment, the spatulas, bowls, even sheet pans and hotel pans, especially. It's hard to keep them in. It's hard to keep them in place. And I mean, I think every kitchen I've seen has a challenge with that. So most of them, it seems like the users need to bring their own, or maybe have a checkout procedure to, you know, to be able to use them, because those things are expensive and the costs add up quickly. Same thing for just something as simple as saran wrap and tin foil. The kitchen that we use, they used to provide tin foil. Now you need to bring your own. They provide the plastic wrap, but and just gloves. You know, you're going through thousands of dollars in gloves a year. Where does that cost get billed to? You know, those are some of those operational expenses that you know, you really need to be thinking about, because those costs can add up pretty quick.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Kier.
Absolutely. Thank you both for your time and participation. And again, to all the attendees, we really appreciate it. And again, keep apprised on our IAC Facebook page of upcoming webinars and opportunities. And again, we definitely encourage you to reach out directly to Scott and Dan, and you know, and of course myself, with any follow-up questions or opportunities that you're looking to explore and venture into. So again, have a good rest of your day, and much appreciated. Thank you all. Take care. Bye.
Thank you all.